Right, Shalom.
Right, Shalom.
First and foremost, as always, we want to give honors and praises out to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham Rakakwadash. Double honors and salutations to the elders, apostles, and the elder bishops of Great Millstone. The water for your labor throughout these years, you're worthy of the title. And shalom to the 144,000. My brothers, my Akim, laboring in this truth, pushing this word throughout the four corners of the globe. Shalom unto you beautiful men, and shalom to the Yapah spirits, right? The innumerable one-third consisting of men, women, and children blessed with the mark of the Thawah, which is exhibit from the judgment fast approaching when you read Ezekiel 9 and 4. All right. I am the brother Yazraela coming back at you with another quick hit lesson through the strength and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai, as that is the actual names of the Heavenly Father and His Son in the ancient Paleo Hebrew. All right. And just a real quick lesson here through the Spirit. I tried to go live with this lesson yesterday, but of course my feed was acting up and this devil's been messing with brothers' feeds and whatnot. So it is what it is. It's grievous, but we have work to do. So we just continue, we don't take it personal. With that being said, the name of this lesson is Continually Are They Gathered Together for War. Continually are they gathered together for war. All right, and that's a heavy statement. All right, so when you read Jeremiah 50 and 23, it says, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? Right, so this is what Jeremiah is basically stating. All right, if you have a hammer, that's a weapon of destruction. All right, and it's saying here, how has this hammer, all right, become broken and cut asunder? All right, and that hammer is Babylon the Great, aka America. All right, and I did a lesson a while back where I had an interview. I took a clip of an interview with a former military general, Wesley Clark, where he had mentioned the 7 and 5, I think it was, 7 countries in 5 years where they were taken down. Ironically, the last country, pertaining to war. Ironically, the last country was Iran, where we are now. But what he had mentioned, what I thought was heavy, he pretty much said, and he was, speaking of America, he says, well, because he didn't know why, when he asked the people up top, the heads up top, why are we going to war? He's like, well, we don't know why. We got a good military and we could take down governments. So he was quoted in saying, and I have the video, he says, well, if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. And I thought that was just heavy. And I immediately thought of the precept we brought out here, Jeremiah 50 and 23. How is the hammer cut asunder and broken? All right. So that's who America is. All right. America has gone throughout the earth and pretty much hammered nations, toppled governments, right, stolen resources, people, you name it, pushes democracy, all right, ideologies, philosophy, all these things by force of the sword onto the other nations, the USD, the money, right? So even now today in this latter in time, when you look at let's say the Ukraine and Russia war that has taken an unprecedented toll, right? When we're looking at diesel, right? I know brothers have gone into that a lot, plus when you add on Iran's fire with the oil infrastructure, firing on the oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, all right, we can see that this is going to cause some major issues. All right, I think barrels of oil are now have reached $100 each barrel, right? And they talk about a term called diesel crack, all right, which pretty much measuring margins and the market flooding due to prices fluctuating, right? So as you know or should know, diesel drives a lot more commercially and globally than regular gasoline. All right, and what does that mean exactly? When you take into consideration heavy duty transportation, machinery, right, industry, military equipment, aviation, aircrafts, semi-trucks, delivery trucks, right, buses, construction equipment, farm, factors, tractors, trains, ships, backup generators, you name it. All right, so this is going to be a domino effect that's going to affect all factions of our daily life, all right, because everything is getting ready to skyrocket. Okay, and this whole Middle East war is a brilliant strategic move by Yahweh Shah to create a trap for this man. All right, because people like to say, specifically Christians, that, oh, well, the Lord, he's all loving. No, no, the Lord is not all loving. Exodus 15:3 says the Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Okay, and according to Ecclesiastes 3:8, we are in that season of war. Okay, this third woe, like the first two, all right, yes, World War I, II, and III are written in the Bible. They're all the Lord's doing. Okay, so this final war that we're in right now, it's already happening, will be the war to end all wars. And there'll be no more Esau, Edom, or heathen rulership. All right, this is that slippery slope, or that slippery place talked about in Psalm 73, wherein the Lord has this man. All right, because this is nothing more than a trap. All right, Jeremiah 50:24. I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art taken, and thou art also taken. O Babylon, thou was not aware. Thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. Right, so America is looked at as this Bible-believing Christian nation. All of our values on Christianity, presidents come in and they lay their hand on the Bible and they swear all that's written in we will do, and then immediately they toss the Bible right behind them. All right, and they do their own will, okay, striving against the Lord, okay? So this war America has initiated with Iran has become a trap, all right, that the U.S. cannot and will not get out of, all right? Because when you really pay attention, if you haven't been already, this is really not about Iran per se. It's more as it is about if the U.S. can still shape events in the Middle East, okay? Washington, the U.S., Esau is no longer the driving force over there anymore. Okay, we are now on defense mode. We're reacting. There's a term in boxing called being on the back foot, right? So for the longest time, America has had what's called the escalation dominance in the earth, all right, in these situations, especially over there in that region, all right, because we've always had a very strong nuclear posture. Okay, and I know that's, a buzzword that's been going around. A lot of you have been paying attention. Nuclear posture basically means reviewing the current status of America's nuclear deterrence, all right, our forces, evaluating any potential threats, and determining whether or not we have the posture, all right, that gives us the capability to manage threats using nuclear weapons. Okay, and so we see right now, as we, brought out Jeremiah 50:23, that that's no longer the case. All right, America has become very, very weakened. All right, so this video here, this is of Scott Ritter, one of the gentlemen that I like to watch. If you're not up on him, you might want to pay attention. He's a former military weapons inspector. All right, and he's very privy, all right, to war strategies and all these things. All right, he pretty much writes them and he's involved in them, and so he's been going in a lot. And I've been watching him for a few years now. But he gives the skinny on the things that our local and major news outlets, Fox and CNN, they're not talking about. All right. So I'm just going to play a little bit of his video. Also, if you get a chance to, you want to check out Kim Iverson. All right. She also goes in a lot. Richard Wolff, that's another one. All right. Just to name a few, all right, that are really going in and keeping a strong eye on though they don't have the spirit of Yahweh Shah upon them, they're not prophets. They were put and set in place to give the skinny on what's really going on. That way, when we are on our watch and we watch different platforms and different things that are going on in the media, we can actually take those things, go in the Bible, extrapolate, and let you know what time we're in. All right, telling you what's going to happen next. All right, so I'm only going to play a little bit of this video, but we'll just go ahead and we'll let him talk for a second.
At the bat, it's insane, because let's just start with a premise that the United States, has adhered to, not honestly, but as recently as February of 2022, together with the four other declared nuclear powers, we signed a document that says that nuclear wars cannot be won, therefore they should never be fought. And that's supposed to be a foundational premise. And yet our nuclear posture actually talks about how nuclear wars can be fought and why we expect to win them.
Right, it is insane. All right, so that joint agreement is called the P5 agreement. It's basically a joint statement of leaders of the 5 nuclear weapon states on preventing nuclear war and avoiding an arms race. All right, and those were issued out jointly to the 5 major nuclear powers, which are United States, we know, Russia, China, the UK, and I believe France. All right, and keep in mind, all these are permanent members of the UN Security Council. All right. And of the 5 weapon states are recognized under the Nuclear Non-Proliferations Treaty. All right. So within this agreement, okay, that was signed, this isn't the first one. All right. But it was signed where they said that we affirm that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. And yet today, the U.S. military's posture talks about how nuclear wars can not only be fought, but won. All right. And that reminds me of, matter of fact, let me grab it real quick. Daniel, the 7th chapter. Now, when you read Daniel, the 7th chapter, it goes into the 4 major captivities, those 4 horns that have scattered Israel, those, so to speak. So let me, matter of fact, just come down here, go over here. I think I have it. Let's see, what does it say up top? Vision of the 4 beasts. All right. You can read about this if you haven't, if you're not familiar with it. Plenty of us brothers have done, starting with our apostles on down for over 40, 50 years, has done multiple lessons on this chapter. It's a very, very heavy chapter. It's very symbolic. All right. Spirit has to definitely be on you to be able to not only know it, but to understand it and to receive it. All right. So I'll go down to 20 here and it says, we'll get straight to the point. And of the 10 horns which were on his head, let me see here. Matter of fact, I'll start at 19. Then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the other beasts, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails brass, and which devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with his feet. Now that's talking about the Roman Empire. All right. When you read Daniel, the 7th chapter, it goes from the Roman Empire to the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the last, Salakia, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. All right, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire, okay, is what it goes into. All right, so when you go to the very last of it, it talks about this little horn. Now, keep in mind, horn just represents power. All right, you see a rhinoceros that has a horn, that's his power. All right, so that's pretty much what it represents here. All right, so it's talking about Rome here, the 4th beast, okay, and it was more diverse than all the others. All right, because when you look at, this is why America's called Rome 2.0. All right, we have the EEC, which was pretty much where the American Treaty of Rome came out of. Right now, when you go back in the Roman history, there were things that they did, particularly pertaining to their weapons and the way they ran their governments. You know, they were the first ones to have the Senate houses. Right, you read that in Apocrypha. All right, where they ruled. You know, they had one man ruling, same as we do today, a president. It was no longer, it went from a monarchy to senates, roughly paraphrasing, right? So that's why when you look at the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, all these were ruled by monarchs. You know, there was a king and then, you know, your son, so forth and so on. Rome was the first one to really implement the Senate house system. All right, and that's where we are today, that's where America's gotten that from, among numerous other things. So we are Rome 2.0. So this is why it says here, which was more diverse than the others. Right, one of the main reasons why is because we ruled senates, we had presidents, we had elections. Same thing as today. All right, now let's get to the point here in Daniel 7:20, just to land back off of what Scott Ritter said. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the others which came up, and before whom 3 fell. So what's that 3 fell? That's talking about Spain, French, and the British. All right, those wars. Okay, and even of them, and even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that speak very great things. This is talking about America, whose look was more stout than his fellows. You see that? So this is talking about America because, as I said, when you look at ancient Roman Empire, even, you know, the weaponry in ancient Rome, they had a new technology or technological advance. They mixed carbon with their metal, which made their metals a lot stronger, their weapons, their swords a lot stronger. So they had multiple advantages in the ancient times. So here we are today, Rome 2.0, where it's pretty much the same as the ancient Roman Empire, but the only difference is we have far more advanced technology. Okay, so this is why this man is being more stout, more impious, all right, more proud, as a matter of fact. So I'm going to go into this word here really quick. Let's get that word stout, what I found to be, and that really goes back to his military, right? Being prideful. All right, stout here, H77229, Rob, and it says, let's see here, great figure of power, captain, chief, right? Let me see here, leader, speaking great things, i.e. chief, leader, captain. Matter of fact, let's go into the root word of that. H7227. All right, and it says mainly, much, great, abundant, enough. I'm going to go into, what am I looking for? Right here, the lexicon. Let's go in here. I found this to be interesting. Let me go down here to towards the end here. It says, all the ancient versions rendered his darts and his arrows, right? So we know in the Bible, darts and arrows are talking about, in these times, are talking about missiles, all right? And goes on to say, others, his archers, right? His missile silos, his tel, right? Which are transporter erector launchers, all right? The sense, however, may be retained his many, i.e. bands of soldiers, which is however harsh, right? The U.S. military. All right, so this is why this man is more stout than the others. All right, so this is why, going back here to what Scott Ritter said, you know, talking about that P5 agreement, all right, with United States, Russia, China, United Kingdom, France, and that agreement that they made, you know, saying that, quote, we affirm that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. And yet today, you got the U.S. Nuclear posture talks about how not only we can fight nuclear wars, but how you can win. See, these people love blood. Okay, every treaty that they've ever signed, they've broken. All right, these people are the wicked that the Bible speaks of. Okay, and you have to know and you have to understand that. All right, so this is why this man is more stout. This is why we read in Daniel 7, he has a mouth speaking great things. We've been to the moon. We do this. Trump went on, and a few of you brothers may have saw it on social media. Well, you know, we've invented everything. We've done everything. And as he's saying, he's got nothing but jakes who are the real inventors of everything from the telephone, the computer, GPS, all these things. This is the pride of this man. All right, so this is what's going in also to that being stout. Okay? So as he's sitting here with these world leaders at the P5, you know, signing this P5 agreement, matter of fact, what comes to mind here is Psalms 55 and 21. Let me grab that really quick. Because this is what you have to understand. The Lord gives us a skinny on how to deal with this man and how he moves. Not only him, but his nation, his descendants. Okay, and we have to be very careful when we're dealing with this subtile beast, because that's exactly what he is. All right, this is 55 and 21. I'll go down here too. It says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter. Right? Oh, yeah, you know, we'll sign the P5 agreement. We agree there will be no, you know, the nuclear wars can't be won, so therefore we're not going to fight them. And it goes on to say what? But war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, and yet they were drawn swords. You see that? So this is why the Bible says these people are not to be trusted. All right? All the nations are now starting to see that. You see? Matter of fact, what brings me to another one. Psalms, what is that, 41? Because King David, King David was going in. Not Psalms, this is Psalms 140, I believe it is. Yeah, let's start up top. To the chief magician, Psalm of David. Deliver me, O Lord, from the evil man. Preserve me from the violent man. All right. So this devil is violent by nature. All right. Esau is that red horse spoken about in Revelation 6 and 4, who takes peace from the earth. Okay. By way of the sword. Okay. Isaac blessed this man with the sword, and his descendants, they are living it out right now. Goes on to say, which imagine mischief in his heart. Here's the point. This is the name of the lesson. Continually are they gathered together for war. Okay, so all of these secret meetings, these projects, these protocols of war, this espionage, government overthrowing by way of what? The sword. Okay, Genesis 27:40 states that Esau shall live by the sword. The sword in the scripture commonly represents Esau's descendants as warlike people. Okay, violent, military power, killing, conquests. Okay. All right, now under Joe Biden, all right, he also mentions, Scott Ritter mentions that after the nuclear posture review, they followed up with a nuclear employment plan, which is nothing more than a nuclear war plan, right? Because they didn't what? They didn't like the limitations placed on the U.S. concerning nuclear weapons, all right, with this New START treaty. Okay, so this is why Proverbs 4 and 16 states that they sleep not unless they cause someone to fall. Okay, so this New START, basically, it's a nuclear arms control treaty between the United States and Russia. All right, it's a bilateral treaty. All right, New START basically is a synonym for what is it? New Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, I think it is. All right, and it started in 2010. All right, and it began to be really enforced in 2011. All right, and the purpose really, it puts limits on the United States and Russia's nuclear weapons and the systems they use to deliver them. Now, keep in mind, now back then, China wasn't a part of this agreement. All right, because their nuclear posture was pretty much more defensive in nature. Okay, so they had a lot of older weapons, and so the U.S. really wasn't concerned. All right, they were not a threat. But now, fast forward today, now you got China has what, them DF-41 ICBM missiles. All right, solid propellants, which are far better than anything that we have here. Okay, Scripture says what? What comes to mind? Let the weak say I'm strong. Right. So now U.S. has now entered into what's called escalation trap, if you will. All right. And basically it's when a threat happens and there's a military response, there's a bigger threat, a stronger response, a conflict. All right. And potentially a much larger war. So basically each side thinks that they have to respond. All right. To what the other side just did, causing the situation to keep escalating. All right. Because neither wants to what? They want to look bad. So this is what the Lord is doing right now. All right. So when you look at the situation with the U.S. and Iran and its escalation trap, all right, quote unquote, basically U.S. attempted to a regime change, right? Targeting the leaders. That didn't work. Right. Missile bases. All right. That didn't work. Iran is still coming. Right. Then U.S. blockade of the Straits of Hormuz. That's still not working. All right. So only thing left really is ground power dilemma, boots on the ground. This is literally leading into World War III. You see, so an escalation trap in discussions with nuclear weapons, leaders want to avoid a situation, right, where each side can keep increasing the pressure until someone crosses that line, right? And once they cross that line, it's extremely difficult to undo, right? And this is what the world is witnessing right now, right? I think it was, what is the IRG? Slovakia. The IRG just, what I want to say, 72 hours ago, a couple of days ago, all right, they announced that this war has not even evolved into its greatest point yet. It haven't even really started. All right, so they're preparing for escalation or to escalate it further. Okay, so this is why, you know, it is a beautiful thing. I was watching, I don't have the video here, but when a couple of videos out, man, you know what? I may have it here, matter of fact. Let me see something. Let me see if I have it in my history here. I think it was Kim Iverson. I think it was. And they were talking about nuclear, the U.S. nuclear position, all right, pertaining to, no, I think that may have been, you know what? That may have even been Scott Ritter. Hold on, let me see.
In the western deserts of China,
just kind of
about if Russia were to nuke Ukraine, the response would not be nuclear, but it would be conventional and overwhelming. That Russia would be taught a lesson that it's never experienced before. Right. And if they dare put a nuke on Ukraine, our conventional overmatch is going to swamp them, come in, take out everything. It's
right, because we no longer have, which most people don't know, we no longer have missiles, man. All right, that's why the U.S. took what went to South Korea, all right, Germany, you know, basically stripping away that their stockpile that they've given them, that they've had, and used them all up. So really, and Barakatah Yahabashim Yasha, me and Aki were just talking about this last night after camp. Only thing the U.S. really has left are nuclear weapons. Doesn't really have any other deterrents outside of nuclear weapons. See, so this is why I say through the Spirit, this MOTB, this mark of the beast, is around the corner. It's coming a lot quicker than brothers think, because we know through prophecy, let everything be done decently in order, right? So so the MOTB has to be issued out first, and then World War III comes in full manifestation. So now we're looking at the U.S. They have no more missiles. The only thing really they have left for the most part are nuclear weapons. That's why, if some of you have been watching, you've been seeing the U.S. talking about nuking Iran. Why is that? Because we're all out of our stockpile. See how the Lord is cold and how he's positioned this, man. This is a trap. You started a war. You went over there. You spread yourself thin, right? Selling wars and all kind of top secret information to these different countries, right? And now here we are at our front door where now the Lord, you've gotten so stout, so bold that you went and started a war with Iran, right? And now you have this blockade. Iran's took control of the Strait of Hormuz, all right, shut pretty much the lifeline of the world down, all right, through traffic and trade. And now you can't get out of it. And now that you have no more missiles, you have no more defense. The only thing really you have left to use are ICBM missiles, and Iran is not moving. See, the nations smell blood. They see that America's become weakened. Okay, so this is the Lord forcing the hand. Let me see here.
It's going to be the end of Russia. Don't even think about it, Russia. Conventional overmatch, premised on long-range standoff weapons and high-quality ballistic missile interceptors to protect ourselves.
We don't have any of those.
Now we go to war against Iran. The first thing that happens is the concept of conventional overmatch immediately goes out the window.
Right.
I don't know what these people were thinking. We couldn't beat the Iranians, and we were thinking we could beat the Chinese and the Russians. So right off, there's a problem with the quality of our weapons. They're not that good.
Right.
They're not as good as we thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a problem with the quality of our targeting, having subordinated targeting away from targeteers like myself to Palantir-driven AI targeting models. We dumbed it down, which means that what we're hitting isn't hitting what we want to hit, etc. And then the Iranians were able to use ballistic missiles against us in a manner that caused us to use a lot of our interceptors.
See?
We ran out of ammunition.
There you go.
And
There
we
it
didn't
is.
defeat the enemy.
There you go.
That was a big problem. The 39-day war ended on day 39 because we simply ran out of the ability to continue the conflict. Now, we took a pause. Donald Trump admits that he lied about the MOU. He lied about it. He just was taking a pause to get oil and bring in ammunition. Where'd they get the ammunition? They stripped it from South Korea. They stripped it from Japan.
See?
They stripped it from Europe. They
See?
stopped sending ammunition to Ukraine and rediverted it to bring it all into the Middle East. And then we started the war up again, and we ran out of ammunition.
See?
And what did we do next? We went to our stockpiles and the strategic reserves that the European war commanders and the Pacific war commanders rely upon, and we stripped those. And then we started renewing, and we ate through these. And when we're told that there is no more conventional munitions, this is the truth. We don't have sufficient long-range strike resources to last more than a week against the Chinese. We have no ability to defend ourselves against North Korean or Chinese ballistic missiles. We have depleted almost the totality of our high-quality PAC-3. It's the same thing in Europe.
Right.
The idea of sending a devastating strike against the Russians is laughable. We don't have those weapons anymore. If you remember, General Chris Donahue earlier this year gave a speech at Wiesbaden when he spoke. He was the commander of U.S. forces in Europe, and he said, Kaliningrad is just 49 miles wide, and we can just take it off the map. We have the ability to do this. We've been preparing for years, precision targeting, etc. We can take everything out. Well, Chris, you can't do that when Chris is fired, so it doesn't matter if the guy took over. You can't do that because you don't have any ammunition.
See?
I mean, even if your target is good, you don't have the ammo anymore. Plus, now when the Russians respond, you can't defend yourself. So we have literally dropped ourselves down to where we cannot wage war
See that?
at all. Conventional war, we can't wage conventional war now.
And why isn't the major news outlets talking about this? Why aren't they going into this? Why aren't they giving you the truth of what's really going on over there? And yet you have President Trump on the news, and all he's doing is speaking great words, as Daniel 7 said he would. Right? We did this, and now they're this. And now the world is starting to see, America's starting to see, these people are nothing but liars, man. We have no idea what's really going on over there. We are in the dark as far as what's going on. At least America is. The men of the Lord, we are the light. All right, so this is the truth of the matter. This is where we are. People thinking it's going to go back to getting better. No. As I mentioned earlier in the video, with the war going on with the diesel oil and how that's going to affect the American infrastructure in a way that's beyond imaginable. You got Indiana, they'd have no power. They didn't have power, was that? And in the past 7 days, Cuba, all of these blackouts that are going on. And because people can still come in the house, you can still turn on your TV, you can still go down to the grocery store and buy your food, you can still go and get your Starbucks, that you think that you're still in a good case. You have no idea what's really going on. America is defenseless, man. It's over. The only thing left is ICBM missiles. And when that happens, everybody's dying here in America, except the elect. You see? Matter of fact, let me grab this here. This is Job 20 and 22. And the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be in straits. Now remember what Trump said. Trump said he renamed the Strait of Hormuz to the Straits of America. That's, once again, the Lord is cold. All right. So here it says here, Job 20 and 22, in the fullness of his sufficiency, right? When he's just getting ready, he's got everything set up, the bio metrics, all right, all got that set up. The data centers are set up. The technological infrastructure is all set up and ready to go. The mark is being pushed out. Everything is ready to go, right? It says, he shall be in straits, and every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. All right. So as I said, I think it's very spiritual that Trump calling the straits now the Straits of America. All right. So when you go into that word straits, the definition is a narrow passage or state of extreme difficulty, stress, or tight restriction. Sounds a lot like the Strait of Hormuz, right? The straits is only 21 miles wide. All right. At its narrowest point. All right. So while he's over there, he's caught. He's in a trap. You can't get out of this. He's literally in straits. You see, goes on to say Bible usage, it denotes being in a narrow place with no room to move, symbolizing judgment or hardship in passages like when it says related to expression in dire straits, meaning facing severe trouble or critical shortage. Critical shortage. You see? So as this war is going on, diesel is now skyrocketing. All right, all the day-to-day things that we need, all right, America needs to function to be able to operate. All right, we're looking at shortages across the board on everything. You see? Jeremiah 50 and 24, I have laid a snare for thee. Isn't that what I said? Babylon is taken, right? So as I said, in this war, and we just heard Scott mention, Iran has used a lot of ballistic missiles, all right? And caused us to use a lot of interceptors, all right? And we simply just ran out of ammunition, all right? We did not defeat Iran. As he said, this 39-day war ended in 39 days because the U.S. exhausted its ability for combat. Call halal Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. You see? Let me grab this. Matter of fact, let me play a little bit more of this.
Against a peer level enemy.
Right.
I'm not saying
peer level meaning someone that of the same or much more power. All right, Russia, China, those are peer level enemies. Slovakia.
That we can't start one and we can't start one.
War,
it
that
would
is.
Be over on day one. We lack the capacity to inflict any meaningful harm, and we lack the capacity to defend ourselves against what would be an overwhelming response. Look at Ukraine today. No air defense.
Yep.
And it's just, could you imagine Europe being laid naked like this? And this is exactly what happened to Europe. They cannot defend themselves.
See?
Taiwan, there's no defense. Japan, there's no defense. South Korea, there's no defense. We have taken it all away. So now,
see, like I said,
that Donald Trump has to acknowledge we don't have any ammunition. What do we do?
ICBM.
We redo the nuclear posture.
That's it.
We are lowering the threshold for the use of tactical nuclear weapons.
That's it. Because that's all we have left. That's all we really have left, pretty much, are nukes. That's it. We have nothing else. The Lord is forcing the hand of this man. Man, this is beautiful. This is masterpiece. Checkmate. This is checkmate.
So that early on now, in any campaign against China or Russia, where we would normally be using long-range standoff conventional weapons, we're going to go nuke early because we have no other option.
You see?
So if we get into a shooting match with Russia over, say, Kaliningrad or the Baltics, or we get into a shooting match with China over Taiwan, we are going to be starting the war with tactical nuclear weapons.
There you go.
And I tell people that at no time has the Pentagon ever had a war game where we simulate the use of tactical nuclear weapons where it doesn't escalate rapidly to a general nuclear exchange where all humanity dies.
That's it. And what he's talking about is Project Looking Glass. All right. So we're in a time of war. All right, you can Google that. Project Looking Glass is a technology that Esau has, or pretty much he implements. He sets a situation with war, then he implements different maneuvers and things that he would like to do to be able to foretell an outcome. Okay, so that's how this Project Looking Glass pretty much can determine how a war is going to end or whether or not they're going to be successful. All right, and there's videos on that now where, of course, I think it was back in 2017, when Esau and then the elites are dealing with CERN. All right, when they had sent messages and they were dealing, because CERN is pretty much left-handed spirits on the left-hand side, and they were pretty much communicating with CERN, and CERN sent back a message that simply said Tekel. Now, if you know anything about Daniel, the 2nd chapter, I believe it is, talks about King Nebuchadnezzar, all right, and how pretty much the Lord sent that hand on the wall, and the writing was when Daniel expounded on what it was, basically says your kingdom is numbered, found, wanting. Pretty much it's over. So that message was sent back through CERN to the elites here in America. All right. So and then you add that onto Project Looking Glass and the things that they saw. That's why they panicked and they shut it off, because every imaginable course that they could take in this third world all led to the same ending. All right. Which is they're going to be exposed and they're going to be destroyed. All right. This is why Proverbs 21:1 says what? The king's heart is in the hands of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will. All right. So this verse, which is a heavy verse, the Lord is in control of all of this, man. OK. Even the most powerful rulers on the earth are ultimately subjected unto Yahweh Yahweh Shah. Right? This verse teaches that earthly authority is never greater than the divine authority of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah. Presidents, kings, judges, military leaders, employees, no matter how powerful someone may seem to appear, their power has limits, and these people are at their limit. It's over. Okay? One more precept I want to grab here. Let's get it. My phone is getting ready to die here, so Abaratazai, get this last one. Job 14:5 says what? Seeing that his days are determined, Esau, the number of his months are with thee, thee meaning Yahweh Shah, Yahweh Yahweh Shah. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. That's it. We're at the end of this man's rulership. We got next. You see? It's all over. The Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men. So this is the Lord's movie. All right. So this man is on his way out. Look, just know the MOTB is coming. It's at the door. The mark of the beast is at the door. It is a micro C-hip. We can't express that enough, starting with our head apostles on down. It is a micro C-hip, dealing with commerce, buying and selling. Why do you think everything is now going digital? Wake up. All right. So anyway, I just want to do this lesson. Abaratazah. It was edifying for those who are meant to receive it. And I want to say, Kol Holo Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakach Wadash, and Shalom.